well, I would be like up and at my prayer chair at 5 a.m. with a cup of coffee, and I'd watch the sunrise and drink coffee and pray. And it was like the most peaceful time, and I absolutely loved it. But anyone who would have known me before this year would have laughed if you said Molly Smith is waking up at 5 in the morning.
All right. Welcome, everybody. You are listening to In the Company of Charity podcast. My name is Sister Liz, and I'm here, as always, with my favorite co-host of all time, Sister Elizabeth Grime.
Hi, Sister Liz.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. This is the second episode of the 4th season. I can't believe it. This is like a real episode because it's not just us talking.
Because we really
like
could talk for hours, but
yeah.
We're going to let some other people talk.
That's right. That's right. And we've got some really, really special people who are going to be talking today. And 3 wonderful young women who are currently postulants in the community. But at the time you interviewed them, they were pre-postulants, correct?
Yep.
So why don't you say a little bit about what's the difference between a pre-postulant and a postulant?
So some communities you might, for those who are familiar with religious communities, there are some different terminology. So postulant, pre-postulant, candidate, these are all kind of terms for people in their very, very first step of discernment with the community. And so when a young lady is ready and feels like they need to discern more intentionally, that is living with the sisters and, sometimes working with them in ministry side by side, sometimes in a different ministry and still living at the place. It's an opportunity for them to get sort of an insider's perspective about the Daughters of Charity and pray with us, eat with us, have fun and sort of discern, is this life for them? And, postulancy is a year long, and that's right before someone would go to the seminary, which is very much like novitiate and in other orders. And so these sort of pre-postulancy into postulancy are very critical times, because that's when you really say, can I see myself in this community? And the community also is saying, yeah, is this person a good fit? Does it seem like God is calling them? And of course, in spiritual direction, in interactions with the community, it's a mutual discernment. And I think it's a cool place to be. It's exciting. And at the same time, it can be very nerve-wracking. And so it's great to hear from these young ladies firsthand about their experience as pre-postulants going into postulancy.
Yeah. And what I think is great, as I was listening to them, not all of our sisters who are, say, over 30, 35 years vocation, seems like a long time, but so the sisters who are, say, over 30 years didn't really have this process. They kind of came in just as postulants maybe, and then went right into the seminary after maybe 6 months. So it feels like a long time, but I remember this time myself as a pre-postulant and then as a postulant and then moving into the seminary. And it is really an amazing time, but it's also really scary. And but it can be really, a formative time. And so, I think as people listen to this episode, I really, really want them to listen to the way each of them, Amanda, Molly, and Alex, speak about their growth, their own sense of development in their prayer, in their community life, understanding community life a little bit more. They talk about some really interesting observations in themselves, things they've learned to do, things they didn't think they wanted to do. Like, I'll just say one, listen for cooking.
Getting up super early to
I
pray.
do not like to cook, and I would like to say to any of these 3 young women, cooking may never be your thing in community. So, I think for me, listening to them, and I hope, others who, as our listeners are hearing their words, I just had such hope. I thought, wow, these young women are, they're so smart and they're so reflective and they sound so prayerful, and they just sound like really wonderful women. And I was really proud of our sisters. I thought, good for you guys, you did a great job. They've learned so much, and they share all these little tidbits that, like, one little sister told them over in the corner, like, well, sister told me this, and I'm gonna kind of hanging on that little bit of wisdom. I just had a lot of hope and a lot of love, for the community and for our sisters as we journey with these women in their continued discernment. So, yeah, I
Yes.
really appreciate this interview that you did with them. It was great.
It's great, and God still calls. And if God continues to send us the caliber and insightfulness and wonderful women like these three, I think we are going to be in good shape for years and years to come. So they're a blessing to us and help us to be invigorated about God's call, because it's inspiring to see the level of people still wanting to follow the will of God, and the joy of and freedom there is in saying yes to the unknown and to what God's path is. So it's pretty awesome.
It is awesome. It's really awesome. Yeah.
So enjoy this episode. We love your feedback. Let us know. You can email us, as always, at companyofcharity@gmail.com, and follow us on Instagram, Company of Charity Podcast. And if you're listening on Spotify, welcome. Glad you're joining us. And thanks so much. Enjoy this episode.
Hello, everybody. This is Sister Liz, and I am here with three lovely ladies. Can't wait for you to meet them. They are our pre-postulants, soon to be postulants, and we're so grateful that you guys have made the time to be here with us on the episode of the podcast, Company of Charity Podcast. So I will let them introduce themselves, and then where you're going, who you are, where you're from, etc., like the short version. And then we'll dive into some, how do you are a young adult in this world entering into religious life? This is the topic of the podcast today. So Molly, why don't you start us off?
Hi, I'm Molly Smith. I currently live in Evansville, Indiana, with the daughters here at St. Vincent's Residence, and I'm moving to St. Louis to Olive Street, and I'll be working at St. Louis Counseling to do school-based social work in some of the Catholic schools there in St. Louis.
Awesome. Amanda.
My name is Amanda Metkovic. I am originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I am a pre-postulant here in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I'm a nurse, and I work at an outpatient cancer center. And the Lord knows what my ministry will be next in Evansville, Indiana, and I'm looking forward to that. We'll see what it is.
And Alex, who's with you here.
Yes, I'm Alex Vizard, and I'm here in Harlingen, Texas for my pre-postulancy. Have the pleasure of being with Sister Liz and other great sisters in this house. I am an accountant by trade, and I've been working at Proyecto Juan Diego this year and helping in their accounting department. And then I will be going to Macon, Georgia for postulancy. I'll be doing a little bit of a different mix of things there, working at a school and another social service agency. So I'm excited for what the year has, and I'm glad you had us on the podcast today.
It's a great joy. We know that the Lord still calls young people to consecrated life, and the three of you are great signs of that in saying yes to discernment, saying yes to taking these next steps and seeing what the Lord has for you and in your call in this life. And So I think kind of where we wanted to go with this group is to talk a little bit about what is that like transitioning into this situation where you're living with the sisters from what your life was before as a young adult, a working person, and in school or what have you. And so I just kind of open the floor, and if you guys want to just share a little bit about what would benefit the listeners here about how do you become like in this sister world from being a normal person, regular person out in the world. Maybe you weren't normal before, but I don't know. Feel free to just jump in, dive in, and share some of your experiences.
This is Alex. I think for me, I was in Chicago for 4 years before I came here. So just city-wise, it's a big change coming to Harlingen, Texas. There's a lot fewer people. It's a lot hotter. But I think for me, I was really involved and active in my community there in Chicago, like not just the Catholic community. I was very involved with that, but also just a lot of different circles of friends. And I feel like I was doing an activity every single night, especially during Theology on Tap season. I don't know if any of you ever go to Theology on Taps, but I had quite a circuit. Monday night was this church, Tuesday night was this church, Wednesday was this church. Anyway, so for me, I think one of the biggest changes was it was really a change of pace. There's still a lot of things in our schedule, where we have prayer and work and meals and whatnot, but it was definitely a shift in the type of activities that I was doing. And so that was the biggest transition for me, but it's been really helpful, honestly, because it's helped me to slow down in some ways and to grow deeper in prayer and in my faith, because I wasn't just jam-packing my schedule all the time with social things. But don't worry, we still do fun things too. But it's a little bit different than like my single Chicago life. And I think another thing too is for 2 years in Chicago, I had roommates, but then for the last 2 years, I was by myself. And just to go back to living with people, and not just people, but the sisters, it was a change too. But I think that it's also one of the things that drew me to the daughters was living in community and having that experience, because I can't imagine doing this alone. And so I've learned a lot of things about the do's and don'ts of community life, but it's been a neat adjustment to see like what it's truly like to live in community, because you don't get a sense of that when you're just looking at communities on the internet. It's until you actually live it that you can see what that's like.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of an interesting point, because whatever you find out there in the world, you find in community, as far as personalities, as far as, ages, as far as people's likes and dislikes. And, in community, we got people who like to play games. We have people who like to do puzzles, people who want to go outside and be active. And so it's kind of like balancing all of those different things among the group. And sometimes we do things that maybe we don't enjoy, but we do it because that the community is doing it.
And you might discover a new joy. You never know.
Writing letters.
That's letters. Yeah, I like that. Yes.
Molly or Amanda?
I think one of the things that I was very scared of going into community, but it was actually okay, was cooking. We take turns to cook. And before I moved here, I had a very healthy diet of pizza rolls and frozen pizza and Easy Mac. And that just would not fly in our houses now. And so learning to cook was an interesting challenge, but it's actually okay. I have learned quite a few meals, and I never set the smoke alarm off or burnt anything. So I think that's a win. Another challenge, or a change for me was I was living with my sister and her 2 kids, who were 4 and 2, and her husband. And so moving out from my sister's house, who's my best friend, and out of the house with my niece and nephew, was different because I was used to like, oh, this is like words little kids say, like super, super, so much, and things like that. Anyway, and so adjusting to living with adults again, as well as living with people who have a different generational, different generations, and not living with my family and being away from my niece and nephew and sister and the rest of my family too.
This is Amanda. For Molly talked about cooking meals, and I love cooking, but I think one of the challenges for me was like, this was involved with cooking, but like learning that our time is not just our own, and that like if people kind of expect dinner to be ready at 6, it should be ready at 6. And sometimes like I had a tough time learning that to like get, and people, the sisters were like so welcoming and never really gave me a hard time about it. But that was something that took me some time to learn. And I think it was an example of kind of a greater challenge of realizing my time is my own, but now it's also how am I using this time to serve the people I live with, and to make life easier for them too, and make sure that I'm not, knowing that we do share this time and we do depend on each other. I was fortunate that I did live in community with 2 friends for 2 years before coming to the daughters here, and we cooked together a lot, and so some parts of community life were familiar. I think the intergenerational living was definitely new for me too, but it really is a gift, intergenerational living, and I've learned so much from the sisters I live with, and it's amazing to hear what they've lived through. And one of them is a midwife, and like, I don't know if you know the show called The Midwife, but like she's lived through that, like what there's like that show in London in the 1960s. And anyway, she was a midwife there. And so I have so much to learn from them, and that's been a real gift that I hadn't anticipated in the same way. So, yeah.
What would you guys say about your prayer life and how that's sort of grown or developed or challenged during this last year? I know that we have different things that we have to do, right? So we do morning and evening prayer, and in our schedule, we do rosary and we do spiritual reading, and those are things that we do on our own. And there are times where we do that together at different times, but where is that for you? And maybe even to touch on some of the spiritual exercises that you guys have learned and experienced in the community.
I think for me, the biggest change has been one of the things that the daughters do is it an hour? Yeah, an hour. It feels like 6 hours. No, just kidding. An hour of meditation every day, like silent meditation. And for me, I'm very talkative, and like I said before, I didn't really slow down a lot before, so that was not part of my schedule at all. There was no meditating.
Zero
like,
silence.
Maybe like in the shower, but that really doesn't count. Not that shower meditation can't be a thing, or mattress meditation. That's my favorite. But anyway, I think that for me, that's been the biggest change in my prayer life, is trying to build in that silence, and that, because I think it's really like, yes, God can speak in all different situations, and he speaks a lot through the people that I interact with, but also it's important to have that time to be quiet, and not just like externally quiet, but internally. And sometimes I can be externally quiet, but it takes a lot more to get to that internal silence, at least for me. And so that's been a big change as far as prayer. And also, I really didn't have it in my routine to pray the rosary, and that's something that the daughters do every day. And so just finding, I remember when I first found out all the different things that the daughters do, I wrote in my journal, how do you fit this all in? There's like way too many things. But what I really like is, it's not like even fitting in and checking off, but like the way that you incorporate it into your day. So like Sister Liz and I pray the rosary on our way to work because we have a pretty long commute. And just being able to, like, it's not just, oh, I have my 10 minutes of prayer time. It's more, there's a lot more prayer in different ways throughout the day.
I think for me, quiet meditation was something that I learned in my first year of nursing. I needed, like, I was dependent on it. Like that's when I realized I couldn't, like, I needed that prayer. It sustains us. And, but it looks, I think the way that I put it into my day has looked different over the past few years. And sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less. And, but it's always a discipline. And I think I'm still learning the discipline of that. But I know that, like, the days that I do give the Lord that time, he makes good of it. And I think one thing that I'm grateful for is the liturgy of the hours, when we pray the Psalms in the morning. And there's something about the Psalms recently that has just been giving me a lot of strength, because they're so human. And I feel like they just, like, some of it just really echoes like the cry of your heart at that moment. And like, really sometimes in challenging moments, especially. And so I've really come to appreciate those in morning prayer and evening prayer too. One thing that I learned from one of the sisters in my house is contemplative work. And she talked about how when she was in seminary, they did a lot of cleaning, and it was quiet. Like, they didn't really talk to each other much, and it was a lot of time in quiet. And she was saying that she had been working with someone recently who got very frustrated over doing what the person had called mindless work. And she said, no, it's not mindless work, it's contemplative work. And she said, like, this kind of work, like if you're just sorting vegetables or something, like, this is when you can pray and just be and let God speak. And I've kind of incorporated that into my work day. When there was a moment, like an hour, that I was just breaking apart bags of fluids. And I think someone might have seen that as mindless work, but I thought of what that sister had taught me, and I used it as an hour to pray. And it was a real gift that I'm grateful that she had taught me that. So, yeah.
This is Molly. For me, one of the biggest changes in my prayer life is I used to pray like 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. Like, it was never like a consecutive time. And so this year it took a while, but kind of like the second half of the year, I started waking up earlier, like before morning prayer, to do my hour meditation. And so I ended up waking up, well, I would be like up and at my prayer chair at 5 a.m. with a cup of coffee, and I'd watch the sunrise and drink coffee and pray. And it was like the most peaceful time, and I absolutely loved it. But anyone who would have known me before this year would have laughed if you said Molly Smith is waking up at 5 a.m. For example, Amanda had to wake up early for her job as a nurse, and she said one time that she was waking up at 4:45, and I said, that's the middle of the night. And then that's when I started waking up. But that was definitely a very positive change for me, as well as apostolic reflection and sharing of prayer are two of the community exercises that I really love. I love hearing with apostolic reflection, seeing how the sisters take like one little piece of their ministry or a person that they interacted with that day or a situation, and they're able to see Christ in the midst of that and connect it to a Vincentian value or part of the gospel that we heard that day or something like that. And with sharing a prayer, it's just really an intimate moment between the sisters to hear like what has been on their heart and what they've been praying about. So those have definitely helped me, as well as morning and evening prayer too.
There's so much there, and I just, that it harkens to some of the different episodes that we've done already, even about apostolic reflection and different ways of praying, and it's cool to hear from you guys about that, because those are apostolic reflection, those are hallmarks of what we do as Daughters of Charity, and the fact that that's important to you, it means a lot, because it means that we're sharing our heart and our lives with you guys, and welcoming you into this spirit that we're so blessed to be able to live out, and that God has called us to. I want to, while we still have a little bit of time, to let you guys give some of your thoughts to people who are listening, who may be at a moment of making big choices in their lives, or wondering what God has in mind. And so any advice or thoughts based on your experience, or recommendations for people who maybe are afraid to take that next step, or who don't know what God's call feels like or seems like. So feel free to offer all of your sage wisdom to our young listeners.
One thing that was hard for me to move past when I was first discerning was I felt like I am surely the only person in the entire world who has this whisper in my head about a religious vocation. I had not known anyone who was my age who had discerned vocation, anything except marriage. And so when it kind of came up, I was like shocked. I was like, what do I do with this? Like, so definitely getting in touch with the vocation director and meeting some other discerners, I think is really helpful, especially getting to know like some young sisters if you're able, because I had never seen a sister who was younger than my grandma. So now I have, but at first that was really challenging. And I was also like, what about like my personality? Like, there's no way I'm going to fit in with there. Like, I have too much personality. But no, that's not at all how it was. And so getting to know the sisters definitely helped to kind of break down those like myths that I was telling myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Molly, I think that's so true, to have those different discernment groups or things. Like, they have so many online now, especially with COVID, a lot of the groups transition to online. So even if there aren't local people in your area, to join those online groups. I had one in Chicago that I was a part of, and even though we were all discerning different communities and different paths, it was super helpful to share thoughts and similarities of our journeys. And so I definitely echo that. And then another thing I would say is, I know it's scary, but just like go out and visit communities, because you can only look online and stalk their social media and their websites so much, and you might be surprised what you find when you actually visit. I know for me, I won't name any names, but I had a community that on paper I thought it was everything that I wanted, because of course I had a checklist of all different characteristics, and I was all excited to go see them. And it turned out that they weren't a good fit for me, and I really didn't feel as comfortable there as I thought I would. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't take the chance to go see them. And then after that, that freed me up to go look at other communities. And then eventually I found the Daughters. And that's turned out pretty well so far. So anyway, I know it's scary to take that step, but those if you want to go on a one-on-one, or if you want to do a group come and see, something like that. And it's not a you're not signing on a line saying that you're going to become one of those sisters. So just give yourself the chance to actually go meet the real sisters and try to live their life as much as you can to see if that's really something that would fit you.
Yeah, I echo all of that. Like, understanding the idea that you are not the only one, you are not alone. And like, if you do feel that way, then it's time to reach out to a vocation director and talk to them, and maybe they'll put you in contact with other people too. And I was fortunate in college to have a discernment group, but before that, I had promised myself, like, I was never going to tell anyone that I had been considering this, because I had thought I was alone in that. And but it's that is not true. Like, he calls us all in a different way. And one of my spiritual director said to me at one point that, like, vocations are like a tree, and like, we have so many options in front of us. I think especially our generation, like, it can be so overwhelming to see all of the options that we can take. And he said, at some point you got to climb out on a branch and just try it and see how it feels. And if it's not for you, you'll know, and then you'll climb back out and climb onto another branch. But if you just keep sitting there and don't try anything, then you'll never be able to grow and flourish. And sometimes that's fear. I know for me, like, I prayed about it and thought about it a long time before I finally made the step of applying. And for me, I had to get over a lot of personal fears and considering other people's opinions of it. But I think if we kind of keep our eyes focused on Christ and know that he takes care of all those things in the periphery and the people that are important to us and the things that are important to us, like, if we just place it in his hands, he will take care of it. But at some point we got to climb out on a branch, and he's going to be with us on that branch. And then at some point we got to make a commitment, but even just applying is not a commitment either. All three of us are discerning, and I think we're all serious about discerning, but it's all a process, and we learn along the way. Yeah.
Well,
but don't be afraid to take another step.
Yeah, don't be afraid. I think that's, if anything, John Paul II, that was his theme, is do not be afraid. And what a great message to end with, because that's where obviously we're all on a journey, and God has plans for us, not just like big life decision plans, but like plans for the little things as well. And I think that refrain of do not be afraid is such a key piece for everyone. And so, as we wrap up, we just assure the three of you of our prayers and support of you in this next stage. And for all the people who are listening, we assure you of our prayers. And in whatever place you find yourself, we are here for you, supporting you, and praying for you in all of it. And so we thank you, ladies, Molly, Alex, and Amanda. Thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you all for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.